Of war, more than 75 of Ukraine's finest musicians have come together to form the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra. Now on BBC World News, Clive tells their extraordinary story.
Images of the war in Ukraine are seared into the collective memory. But now a new front line is opening up, and it's being fought not with rockets, but with musical instruments, and the rise and fall of a conductor's hand.
My baton is my weapon. It's one that reaches to the soul. It's not one that kills.
Music is such an important tool in our lives, not just to bring pleasure, but also to heal and to bring hope.
"75 of Ukraine's best musicians are about to come together to form an extraordinary new orchestra.
Дуже потужна енергія в кожного з нас, тому що ми зараз дуже сильно переживаємо все, що коїться в Україні.
Today I am a bit nervous. The trip has begun.
But creating a world-class ensemble from scratch is ambitious, and there are just 8 weeks before their first concert.
Казав, що начебто в п'ятницю мають зробити. Для виїзду воно треба.
I'm going to follow their journey across Europe. Can they escape the tumult of their homeland to play on the stage of the Royal Albert Hall? Why is the message they're carrying so important that they're willing to leave those they love behind?
I'm afraid I will miss my daughter so much.
And I'm going to ask whether musical notes arranged on a page have the power to define and ultimately heal.
We want to prove that this is the voice of Ukraine, that you cannot erase it. You cannot erase the culture.
Good evening. We're live in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, in an underground shelter. Russian forces are closing in on the city. As a journalist, I reported on the first days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It was a full-scale military assault by land, sea, and air. For months, the Ukrainian people have been fighting a battle for national survival, and the cost in lives and destruction has dominated the nightly news. But I've heard about a group of Ukrainian musicians who want to fight back in a different way, with the weapons they know best, their musical instruments. 75 of them have decided to come together to form a brand new ensemble, the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra. Now, I'm returning to the country. I want to meet some of the performers and find out why playing classical music together is as important to them as fighting on the front line. In just 2 months, the new orchestra is due to perform at one of the most high-profile classical music festivals in the world, the BBC Proms. But there's a catch. The orchestra still doesn't exist, and many of its members remain here in Ukraine. This song, an adaptation of a 17th century Cossack march, was banned here during Soviet times. But it's recently become popular again as Ukrainians turn to music to express solidarity with their homeland. Yevhen Ulyanov is a percussionist with the National Symphony Orchestra in Kiev and now a member of the nascent Freedom Orchestra. He's also a new dad.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And I have a present.
The birth of a child is a transformational moment for any parent. But for Yevhen, there's an added twist. His wife Tatiana gave birth to their daughter Anna on the very same day Russia invaded their country.
I just remember one moment. My husband was standing close to me and I saw him a little bit in tears.
Really?
And I realized that something is going on. For him, it was too much.
48 hours later, the war reached their own doorstep.
An early morning strike on a block of flats. The authorities here say it was a Russian missile that killed 2 people.
Yeah, that pink building.
Right.
It was like from that side. You can see the damage from this side, but from that side you can certainly
It's much more devastating. And
Yeah. This
is the video.
Yeah.
Тільки що жахнуло. Що ж таке? Так спокійно. Люди по вулиці йдуть собі спокійно, як ні в чому.
That must have been terrifying.
I couldn't even understand what
It will be difficult for Yevhen to leave Tatiana and baby Anna behind. But for him, joining the orchestra is important.
Many of people are trying to volunteer to help our government, our soldiers. Я вже забув, чи я грав в гармонії, чи ти грав. For me it's also help because I can do my job and I can help my country and support people.
Like Yevhen, many of the musicians in the new Freedom Orchestra are living in a war zone. There are no flights to or from Ukraine. So 2 weeks before the concert, those still based in the country hope to make the journey by road to Poland, where they can safely gather to rehearse. Hundreds of miles away from the front line with Russia is the city of Lviv. Although far from the battlefield, this metropolis of almost 750,000 people has been dragged directly into the conflict. Just weeks ago, 7 civilians here were killed in a missile strike. I'm in Lviv to meet Anna Bura, a 30-year-old violinist whose entire family are fighting for Ukraine in their own separate ways. This is a family with a strong musical lineage. Anna's grandmother was a professional violinist and encouraged her to take up the instrument when she was just 5 years old. Today, Anna plays for the Lviv National Opera.
Since the war,
You understand that music is not so helpful in this situation. And so you host people or volunteer somewhere else.
You can't play. I couldn't play first 45 days, then I just...
After the war started?
Yep. Nice. Because the point of music is the point of joy. Even when it's sad music, it's the joy of this sadness.
So the music helped fill that emptiness that you had at the beginning of the war?
Yes, actually I felt that it helps me to put myself together, because when you practice you can concentrate. Also I realized that we can help people with music as well.
Yes.
So people also need this healing. I always had this beautiful dresses for performance, for concert.
Anna and her friends are practicing a work by the 20th century Ukrainian composer Vasyl Barvinsky. He was arbitrarily denounced by the Russians in 1948 and imprisoned for a decade. The secret police also burned his musical scores. But lovers of his work have been able to reconstruct some of them.
Actually, I cannot listen or play Russian music now. I have to play Ukrainian music to promote Ukrainian music in the world, not Russian, because everyone knows Russian composers, but not so many people knows about Ukrainian. And this is our mission, like musicians, to make people know about our culture more.
The war might be far away geographically, but it's actually really close to you because your father is on the front line.
I miss him really much, and I haven't seen him for already 6 weeks. Of course I'm worrying about him. It's not a safe place at all. But also I'm proud.
Anna is determined to bring Ukraine's distinctive musical traditions to a wider audience. And I want to understand her father's feelings about his daughter's quest. I need to get near the front line of the fighting to speak to Yaroslav. He's in an infantry unit at a classified location near Sumy, a city in the far northeast, very close to the frontier with Russia. Naturally, we need permission to get anywhere near the front line. And in order to speak with Yaroslav, we need the permission of the Ukrainian forces. We're just 17 kilometers from the border with Russia, and this area is still under constant rocket attack. Clive, pleasure to meet you. It's great to meet you. Your whole family, they miss you. Yaroslav did his national service decades ago. Now, aged 55, he's volunteered to come back and fight.
Я свій вибір зробив. Знаєте, коли зробив? Коли був перший ракетний обстріл міста Львова, і коли я побачив свого внука, коли він спускався в сховище в нас, і пам'ятаю до сих пір його очі. Очі зі слізьми. 8 років, а в очах було і біль, і страх. Зато ми і тут.
And is that what you told your wife when she asked you not to go?
Хотів зберегти, щоб ми хотіли, щоб був вдома, був біля жінки, біля сім'ї в такий важкий час. Але з другої сторони, хто як не ми.
So now, both your daughters are going to be playing in the Ukraine Freedom Orchestra.
Мої дівчата мають можливість популяризувати і привертати увагу до України власне скрипкою. Оці концерти допоможуть ще більше звернути увагу на події, які відбуваються в Україні.
Yaroslav is fighting in a war for independence, the kind of struggle Ukraine has known before. This is a country with a long and bitter history of being fought over by its bigger neighbors. It's been ruled at different times by empires based in Warsaw, Vienna, St. Petersburg, and Moscow. And each imperial power has left its mark on the country.
Ukraine's been the object of desire and aggression for centuries. This imperial legacy has left Ukraine often embattled. So it's indeed a kind of battleground, but it's also been a proving ground, and a proving ground for an idea at the center of Ukrainian national identity, and that is the concept of volia, defiant freedom. Art and culture have expressed that defiant freedom for a very long time. And not freedom for Ukrainians only, but freedom for all peoples. From the folk songs of the 17th century to the romantic verse of Shevchenko in the 19th, the dramatic poetry of Lesya Ukrainka in the early 20th, to what we're seeing now in popular music with Ukrainian rap taking the stage at Eurovision. Now we're coming to grips with just how often external forces have sought to obscure Ukrainian culture from the world.
Although Ukraine has been an independent country since 1991, following the breakup of the Soviet Union, Vladimir Putin now insists that Russians and Ukrainians are one people.
And Russia has been accused in the current conflict of deliberately targeting historical and cultural sites as a way of trying to destroy an independent Ukrainian identity.
The Ukrainian state clearly understands the importance not only of winning on the battlefield, but also showcasing Ukraine to the world, because one of the reasons why this war has been so violent and aggressive is partly because of our own ignorance about the country. We've let this happen in many respects because we haven't paid attention. So the orchestra is bringing Ukrainian culture to the world, but I also think it's working towards a victory in which we all understand and see Ukraine much better than we ever have before.
One member of the new orchestra, violinist Yulia Rubanova, knows all too well what Russia's attempt to obliterate Ukrainian culture really means. She lives here in Austria, but grew up in Ukraine's southern port city of Mariupol, where her parents, both musicians, still live. In March this year, Russian forces announced they'd taken control of the city, trapping tens of thousands of civilians.
Ну, мы вообще не знали 2 месяца, живы они или нет. И когда появилась связь, мама взяла телефон у какого-то солдата.
For 2 months, they managed to cling to life in the besieged city.
То, что они выжили, это, в принципе, случайность. И у моей подруги, допустим, у нее родители заживо сгорели. Там, она просто сидела в подвале, мама не могла уже бегать в подвал, и попала ракета, и дом сгорел, мама заживо сгорела. Это там... Ага, тут даже открыто.
Her parents Serhiy and Vita have finally been able to escape. This is the first time Yulia has seen them in months.
Hey! Ой, девочка. Ой, привет, 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 моя зайка. Ой, привет. Привет. Ой, папочка. Папочка, привет. Привет, Наталья.
Все хорошо. Все хорошо, мы ж выжили. Даже все хорошо.
Выжили и даже добрались до Австрии.
Да, да.
Да, первое, что радует людей из Мариуполя, что они выжили, а потом они начинают понимать, что у них ничего не осталось.
Yulia's family lived within sight of Mariupol's theatre, and had performed on its stage. In March, Russian bombs destroyed the building.
То ли бомба, то ли ракета упала, там сразу было 300 погибших. Но потом они из него сделали учебную цель. Это мы прекрасно знаем, потому что мы все это наблюдали с 5-го этажа своей квартиры. Они били все время в одно место.
More than 1,000 people were reported to have been sheltering in the basement.
Из одного драматического театра достали 600 трупов.
Выступали с Алисой.
Да, вы играли? Да, мы играли.
But in the aftermath of all the destruction, and after more than 400 other attacks on cultural sites, Yulia is determined to fight back.
Мы должны быть вместе. Так же, как Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra этим летом. Мы должны быть вместе. Нас разбросало в разные абсолютно города Европы, по разным частям, да, но этим летом мы будем вместе, и мы будем... Це буде Україна. Ми будемо разом.
For Ukrainians, the Mariupol theatre attack felt like a deliberate assault on their culture. A heritage that can be traced back to the late medieval world of wandering Cossacks who sang songs that spoke to an illiterate and virtually enslaved peasant population, of past days of freedom. Over centuries, this cultural history influenced generations of Ukrainian musicians and composers seeking to assert an indigenous identity against foreign rule. Time to head to the capital. In just 5 days, the Freedom Orchestra will finally come together for rehearsals. Percussionist Yevhen is getting ready to leave his family.
I'm afraid I will miss my daughter so much. And when I came back, she will be almost 6 months.
Yevhen's been given special permission to leave his country in wartime. But he's uncertain about what the trip will bring.
Of course, always the new orchestra, new musicians is quite, maybe not nervous, but you need time to feel each other, to take connections between each other.
Within days, he'll be leaving for rehearsals in Poland, but he's heard some men of military age are being turned away at the border. He calls a friend in the orchestra to check he has the right paperwork.
Ти не знаєш, що це тобі вже теж бронь зробили, да, оцю? Казав, що начебто в п'ятницю мають зробити. Бо це нам же, в принципі, для поїздки цього не треба. Правильно? Це просто тут для внутрішнього користування. Для виїзду воно треба.
It's too late to get an extra permit. He'll have to gamble that the border guards will let him cross. Most of the new orchestra's musicians are based here in Ukraine. They hope to travel by coach across the border to Poland. In just 2 weeks, they'll play the Royal Albert Hall. In the city of Lviv, violinist Anna is making her final preparations.
I always dream about visiting Great Britain. I'm still not packed at all.
It's time for her to join the other young musicians from across Ukraine. This is the start of a long international tour. months away from their families back home.
Today I am a bit nervous. The trip has begun, so I'm really excited. Sometimes it's hard. You realize, yes, that the war is going on. It's not over. But we need to get some power for a future fight.
The war means tighter checks on who can and cannot leave. The coach is held up for 6 hours at the border. Finally, it's waved through and passes into Poland. For the musicians, it's the first stop on their musical odyssey. They're heading to Warsaw, where they'll be based for rehearsals and an inaugural concert.
It's another country, another people, another conductor, so many things will be different.
The Freedom Orchestra's musicians have made it to Warsaw. Soon the hard work will begin at the city's famous opera house to mold a credible ensemble in just 10 days. I'm also here for the start of what will be an intensive rehearsal period.
And here are our musicians. The poster for the concert, there's Yevhen, the bottom there, and Anna, our violinist there. They're all here in Poland at the home of the National Opera, and they're finally going to be playing together. This incredible project is going to get some life.
I want to meet the person who came up with this extraordinary musical idea. The conductor, Carolyn Wilson. What was the motivation for creating this orchestra?
I'm Canadian-Ukrainian. My great-grandparents came from Chernivtsi, which is in the west of Ukraine. And when I was a child, I heard Ukrainian spoken in the home. I was taught all of the beautiful traditions of the Ukrainian culture and very passionate about my Slavic blood. So at the beginning of the invasion, I wanted to fight, but as a musician. Instead of taking up a pistol or a gun, I wanted to hold my baton in defense of its culture, of its soul.
Vladimir Putin says Ukraine doesn't have a culture.
He doesn't understand his history. I don't think he understands the human soul and how we are all brothers and sisters of these Slavic nations. There's such a strong history between Ukraine and Russia. So this fight is not only about Ukraine, it's about all of us. We can speak to one another despite our differences and share at least music together. Мы начнем, пожалуйста, почтить минута молчания всех наших любимых Украины.
How did you go about finding them?
There were glitches along the way. We had a bass player who was drafted to the military. And believe it or not, just 2 days ago, we had our principal's second violinist was packing, and he found his passport on the table, which had been chewed by his dog. So he's now unable to come.
The program that the orchestra's playing, Silvestrov, Chopin, Beethoven, Fidelio. There is a link between all of those, isn't there?
I selected this program First of all, because I love the music. That I have to establish. I had to have a Ukrainian composer. Valentin Silvestrov is the most famous and celebrated living composer. He's now 84 years old after spending a life in Ukraine.
So what are you hoping to achieve then?
This orchestra is united to play to the world, to galvanize audiences on our tour. And I feel that there's not a better time now. The war is becoming a little less present in the news cycle, but it's getting stronger. There's more death, there's more fighting every day. The musicians who have families now in Ukraine, it must be absolutely horrific. But we're all determined and strong and united for this reason, that you will not silence us.
On the first day of rehearsals, there's a nervous energy amongst the musicians.
Самое важное. Не слышу самое начало. 5, пожалуйста.
Фантастика, фантастика. Да, у нас есть работа. Мы занимаемся. А сейчас я буду сказать спасибо. Сделаем перерыв. Перерыв, хорошо?
The first run-through seems to have gone well. I wanted to catch up with violinist Yulia, who's learned much more about her parents' escape from Mariupol.
So really, in Mariupol, it was a beautiful city.
Yeah.
And like here, it was like this.
And now it's devastated.
А мої батьки не змогли виїхати, вони ще дуже сильно захворіли на корону, і потім почали бомбити вже і сполучення. Вони сказали, що вони просто збирають ці каплі дощу, щоб щось пити, тому що в них вже не було що пити, в них не було тепла, в них не було ні газу, ні світла, ні електрики, і взагалі нічого того, що ми маємо для нормального існування. І це був мій останній зв'язок з ними.
As a professional musician, Yulia continued to perform regularly in Austria, but her parents were never far from her mind.
І публіка сміється, публіка радіє. Це був неймовірний контраст. Диригент дивиться на мене, а в мене просто тече з мене. Колеги кажуть, можливо, ти візьмеш відпустку, тому що це було дуже важко.
Did you fear that you wouldn't see them again?
Звичайно. Every time I thought that I hope they still live, but I understood that it could be. Це могло би бути і так, і так.
Has music helped you through the darkest of times?
Музика – це моє життя. Ми всі з різних куточків України зібралися в один оркестр. Ми всі різні, але ми маємо на общий результат працювати.
Это наша семья. Лятик Астрол. We are united to fight for Ukraine on the cultural front.
We usually think of music as able to transcend borders, to knock down barriers. But actually, it's in times of crisis, like wars, when nations tend to turn to music to show their patriotism. And there is one living Ukrainian composer who has a special place in the hearts of its musicians. His name
is Valentin Silvestrov.
Silvestrov is such a revered father figure for younger composers of all stripes. In 2017, there was a concert of Silvestrov's music at the Kyiv Conservatory. The minute they opened the doors, it was like a storm to get seats. People were literally fighting over seats. There was this great need to hear his music.
Silvestrov began his career in the 1960s, but after falling foul of the Soviet authorities, his music took a new direction. It was Ukraine's declaration of independence in 1991 that would affect him most profoundly.
Once Ukrainian independence is declared in 1991, the end of the Soviet Union, Ukrainians are beginning to try to figure out what that means for them as a country, as a people. And Silvestrov very slowly begins to write music that is much more nationalistic, it's much more religious, and it's much more engaged with this idea of what does it mean to be Ukrainian. He is articulating in sound this growing self-awareness.
In 2014, violent demonstrations broke out, protesting against corruption, police brutality, and the then government's close ties to Russia. Over 3 days, more than 100 people were killed. It became known as the Maidan Uprising and inspired Silvestrov to write his most political music.
Silvestrov wrote a few songs in memory of those protesters. These have very overt political causes, and they were meant as a way to memorialize and to give listeners a sense that they were not alone.
What better piece to program than his 7th Symphony? Silvestrov wrote it for the person most dear to him. Это Лариса. Записано там в партитура, и Лариса был Ждан Silvestrov. His wife died in 1996. As a gesture to all of our sisters and brothers in Ukraine, everyone that we've lost, and all of those beautiful souls that will live on, this is our dedication to them.
Listening to the rehearsals for the Symphony No. 7, one passage is striking. The brass players blow into their instruments without forcing notes.
Как сказать на украинском? Like a wave.
I was standing in the wings while you were practicing the Silvestrov 7th Symphony, and there is an incredibly powerful moment where you've got the tolling of a bell with the percussion, and then the brass section. The players, in turn, force air into the instrument, but there's no note that comes out. And that is incredibly poignant. What was Silvestrov trying to represent there?
Well, there's a beautiful story behind this symphony, is that he dedicated it to his wife. Ultimately, it is about her spirit, it's about her dying breath, but for me, it represents soul and life. And this is symbolic why I chose the symphony, because it was dedicated to her, but we can dedicate this as a symbol of the soldiers and all of the victims who are dying and who have died in Ukraine. So this is a very profound and spiritual work for us. That's why this is such a great piece we can perform, because audiences will understand the emotion that we all have together. So it's hope, it's a message of continuity despite all of the tragedy, and that's our message ultimately on this tour.
While rehearsals continue in Warsaw, I'm travelling to Paris to meet the ensemble's star pianist, Anna Fedorova. She's been busy playing a series of benefit concerts for Ukraine. Anna.
Hi. Hi, Clive.
Pleasure to meet you. It's good to see you.
Very nice to meet you.
The Chopin is very special to you, particularly in recent times. Just explain why.
All of us Ukrainians, I think we feel even closer to Chopin because our destinies are quite similar at the moment. He was also forced to escape from his own beloved country, Poland, because of the invasion of Russia at that time. And he lived in exile in France for the rest of his life.
I just wonder how intense your playing has become.
I feel, especially when it's really dramatic music, the tragic music, the dark music, I feel that it connects even more with me now, because also these emotions are the ones which I'm going through.
And are there moments when you're angry about what is going on? When you attack the keyboard?
Yes. Yeah, that also comes through a lot when I'm performing.
Really?
I think with Chopin, you can never be aggressive when you play Chopin. So what emotions that rather are coming through here is the scream of the soul.
That's what you're thinking?
Yeah. The drama, the dramatism of situation, the tension. These are the emotions.
The grueling rehearsals continue, with the proms not far away.
3-8. When we come together, we make music together in these 10 days.
Yeah, Ben. It's good to see you again. My word, look at you, ready to go.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Excited. Замечательно. Супер. Не перевершено. Я не можу описати те, що я відчуваю. Це фантастика просто.
And all that work, all the preparation over the last few weeks, it's come to this now. In just a few minutes, you'll be on the stage.
Yes. Very excited. Hope we can perform very well in such a great hall, such a great acoustic. It's wonderful.
Julia, Anna, it's so good to see you here.
Я думаю, що для нас це, для кожного з нас це було мрією виступати на цій сцені, і ми не могли повірити, що це відбудеться. Це дуже зворушливо і дуже потужна енергія в кожного з нас, тому що ми зараз дуже сильно переживаємо все, що коїться в Україні.
We are still fighting, and we need all the world to continue helping us, because we cannot stand alone.
It's only been a few weeks since I first met members of the new orchestra, and to come together here, many have had to leave behind friends and relatives in the middle of a war zone. But in that time, they forged a new collective with a powerful message to carry to the world about Ukrainian culture. They're doing their bit for their country, inspired by the conductor, Carolyn Wilson. Now you're here at the proms at the Royal Albert Hall. How difficult was it getting this orchestra into shape from that first moment?
Of course, the first rehearsal was rough, but 10 days of intensive military boot camp for musicians, it was, the results are phenomenal, and I couldn't be happier. As their leader, together we're united as soldiers of music, to show the world that Ukrainian culture is alive, it's rich, and it can't be erased. My baton is my weapon. It's one that reaches to the soul. It's not one that kills. It's one that is about life and hope and freedom and unity.
Maestro standing by.